Arden Labs, specializing in high-performance software consulting, training, staffing, and development. Welcome to Module 10 Channels. Let's get started with Lesson 10.1, Signaling Semantics.
So the other part of being a multi-threaded software developer is the orchestration. And I've shown you already how to use wake groups to do orchestration. But one of Go's biggest features is the channel. And it's the channel that allows us to do orchestration in a much simpler way, simpler than we've ever had the ability to do it before. And there are some real basic patterns around channels that if you learn, it's going to help you be better at thinking about orchestration. For me, too many developers make a mistake by thinking about channels as a data structure, as a queue. And I don't want you to think about a channel as a data structure or queue. Channels really provide one basic semantic, and for me, that is signaling. A channel allows one Go routine to signal to another Go routine about some event. Sometimes we can signal with data, sometimes we can't. But it's the signaling semantics that are very important here, and that's what we have to talk about. So let's get into these signaling semantics. Now, the first thing you want to think about when it comes to signaling is on the send side. I always like focusing on the send side. So the question becomes, does the Go routine that is performing the send, and remember this is signaling, so we say send and receive, not read and write. Is the Go routine that is signaling, performing the send, does that Go routine need a guarantee that the signal being sent has been received? That is the very first question that we want to ask. Does the Go routine performing the send need a guarantee that their signal has been received? If the answer is yes, that changes the dynamics. If the answer is no, then obviously the dynamics change in the opposite direction. So let me give you a kind of a little bit of a storyline where we can think about how this would work in our code. And I always love to think about Go routines as people, and I always love the idea of a manager and employee relationship. And we're going to use these ideas as well to read code to find problems. So let's say that I work with Jack every day. And normally what happens is I come in the morning and I go over to Jack and I give Jack work to do in the morning. And Jack gets it done, and he usually has it done before lunch, and I can go and I can pick it up. And we have this relationship. And the reality is that Jack's not always in on time, and it's never really mattered before because I would just walk in over to Jack's desk and put some work on his desk and walk away knowing that Jack was going to get it done. But a couple of days ago, unfortunately, Jack decided to throw me under the bus. You see, I left the work with him like I always do, and then when I came back in the afternoon, it hadn't gotten done. We got into a little bit of an argument, and at the end of the day, it got back to our managers, and I got in trouble for the work not getting done. Not Jack, I did. And now I'm at a point where I cannot trust Jack anymore with just getting the work. Jack basically told the manager that he'd never gotten that work from me, and that's why he hadn't gotten it done. Obviously, I put it on his desk, right? I wouldn't be lying, but here we are in a little bit of a row. So moving forward with Jack now, I need a guarantee that when I give him work, that he's received it. So the next morning now I come into work, it's 9 o'clock, and Jack is not in. As far as Jack's concerned, 10 a.m. is the new 9. But here I am again, I'm stuck, right? I have to get the guarantee that Jack receives this work. So now I'm stuck at Jack's desk waiting for Jack to come in. Now eventually Jack comes into work. Maybe he gets in at 9:30. And when he does, I take the work that I need to give him and I perform this send. So here I am right here performing that signal, right, with the send. But remember now, the way to get the guarantee is for Jack to come in. So here I am on the send side. Jack comes in on the receive side. Here's Jack. Here I am. And the only way we get this guarantee is if the receive happens before the send. In other words, Jack pulls this out of my hand and says, OK, now I have it. That's where we get this guarantee of delivery. That Jack pulls it out, the receive happens before the send. I can look at my hand and go, oh, yep, it's gone. Jack took it and we move on. Then in the afternoon, I come back to get that work, and Jack's again not at his desk. Maybe Jack went to lunch early. There's guarantees involved now because of the problems that we were having. I'm now stuck at his desk again. I wait for Jack to come back from lunch. Maybe it takes him 45 minutes. He comes back. Then Jack performs his send. I can perform the receive. We come together. Receive happens before the send. And now Jack gets the guarantee. So guarantees are critically important. They're going to help us with consistency. They're going to help us know that things are happening when they happen. But like everything that we've talked about right now, nothing is free. And if you want the guarantee that a signal being sent has been received, if we have to wait for the receive to happen before the send, then what you have to live with is this unknown latency cost. And remember, what's slowing down your program's throughput? Latency. So there's nothing free here. To get the guarantee, you have to appreciate the fact that there may be unknown and high latencies while you are waiting, maybe on the send side, to be able to perform that send because the receiver has to come along, or even on the other side, the receiver comes in first, but we're waiting for the sender. In other words, the sender and the receiver have to come together. Now, I'm losing a lot of time on this guarantee with Jack. So I have a conversation with Jack, and I say, Jack, you know what? Let's make up. Let's not fight anymore. And I don't really care what time you get into work. It's not my problem. But I need to get back to the way things were. Jack and I make up. So now this time when this time when I come into work, Jack again is not at his desk. I don't care. I can perform my signal, my send, right? I can perform the send, place that piece of work on his desk, and walk away. The send happens before the receive. And I'm going to get the benefit of not having to incur all of that extra latency, especially the unknown latency. But remember, there's nothing free about that. Now I have the cost of risk, because now, again, I don't know when Jack is coming in. I don't know when he's going to take the work. I don't know it. I'm really taking a risk that Jack is going to come in and do something. That's the problem with not taking the guarantee. But what's the benefit? The latency has been either removed or reduced. And so we've got to be very clear that whatever benefit we're taking, the risk is worth it. We're going to walk away from the guarantee for the benefit of that reduced latency. The risk of not having the guarantee better be worth it. And in different patterns, we're able to take those guarantees, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can not necessarily say can't, but sometimes we can walk away from them and still make sure that we have these high levels of integrity. At the end of the day, there's a guarantee somewhere. If it's not going to be on the channel signaling, then it's got to be somewhere in the code so we know that some concurrent, say, operation has been completed. All right. So that first question we talked about was on the signaling semantics. Do we need a guarantee that the signal being sent has been received? Now, the other question we can ask is, do we want to signal with data or without data? The example that I showed you was signaling with data. We had a piece of data that left my hands, went into Jack's hands, left Jack's hands, went into mine. And when you're doing signaling with data, that's only a one-to-one signal, okay, a one-to-one. But what if we wanted to do a one-to-many? What if we needed a bunch of go routines to know about an event? Well, there's only one piece of data, so I could signal individually, but that would take some time. So we have the ability to signal without data. And we do that by closing a channel. So the idea there is that we basically turn the lights off. If there was an auditorium of people and we turn the lights off, everybody would see that event. They wouldn't have anything to take home with them, but they would see it. And that's what closing the channel does. You don't need to close the channel for memory leaks or issues like that. It's literally just a state change from open to close. And a channel can be in one of three states. A channel can be in an open state, and we do that by making a channel. So we've got to use the built-in function make to put it into an open state. Then receives and sends can happen in many of the ways that we describe. A channel could be in its zero value state or a nil state. That means sends and receives are going to block. We can use that for short-term shortages, like rate limiting and things like that, maybe in event loops. And then finally, a channel can be closed, we're going to use that mainly for cancellation and shutdowns. And we'll see all of that. So these are those signaling semantics that we're going to be using moving forward. One, does the sender need a guarantee that their signal has been received? How does that work? The receive happens before the send, and both send and receiver have to come together at that moment in time. When I say that the receive happens before the send, it's going to happen nanoseconds before. Remember, we're still in a multi-threaded environment here, and it happens nanoseconds before. So do we need that guarantee? If we take the guarantee, we got to live with the unknown latency. If we don't take a guarantee that signals being sent has been received, we can reduce or almost eliminate that latency, but there's risk. And the more risk, the more problems. Then we need to know the state of the channel, so that's going to tell us how it's going to operate. And then finally, we want to know, do we need to deliver that signal with or without data?